Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another one of our author talks for our fall programming at the Pines and Plains Libraries of Elbert County, Colorado. I am very excited to have with us today an award-winning author that is actually local here in Colorado and near us to our library district. Randy Weir is with us today. We're going to talk a lot about his books. We're also going to talk a lot about where we can find his books, his writing processes, and his writing history. So thank you so much for joining us, Randy. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I always enjoy talking about books.
Absolutely. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in some of our previous conversation too, you'd mentioned that you've previously done an author talk with us before, correct?
I actually was at the
Oh,
library
nice.
and did a little signing and sell and talking about books and stuff. I want to think it was in 17, 18, something like that.
Okay.
So it was a few years back
Yeah.
before COVID and all that.
Okay. Yeah, probably
And,
with Chelsea. I know we did some
yes.
of our programming looked a lot different now than what it does, or what it did then to what it does now. We definitely would love to have you back in the library to do a signing. Let's talk a little bit about your books that you have available. So you started writing whenever you were younger, correct?
Yeah, when I was a teenager, I used to write poetry and things like that, which was back way more decades than I care to admit.
Okay.
Um, but that was kind of how I dealt with teenage angst. And,
Yeah.
poetry is not really a book, but, it's still telling a story and in there, maybe a little shorter form. And back in the 80s, I wrote like three novels just out of the blue and tried to get them published. Never had any luck with that. Um, Even did some of that on an actual typewriter.
Oh, nice. Very
Very well,
cool.
early days of computers. It was kind of
Yeah.
before I really had a computer and word processor and stuff.
Yeah.
And I still have those filed away somewhere.
That's
Maybe
cool.
someday I'll revisit them, and
There
they
you
would
go.
need some major updating, but come a long way since then.
Yeah.
Then kind of put writing aside for quite a few years. Got married, had a kid. Those things kind of became
Oh,
the priority.
yep.
Work, work, work.
I know
Make
the
money.
feeling. Uh-huh.
Yeah, my daughter got a little bit older and, teenager and so all that. And
Yeah.
I pulled out a short story I had written, I don't know, probably in the 90s.
Mhm.
The case of the missing bubblegum card with a private eye named Jarvis Mann. And I kind of went from there. And my wife always liked it. And she said, you should seeing about getting that published. And I had some
Yeah.
other people read it. And everyone told me, this would make a good series. Because Jarvis Mann would be kind of a cool private eye. So I kind of went
Yeah.
from there and started writing books, and the first one was published in 2014, and I've had at least 8 total books in that series, and then I've started a new series as well, so
Very cool. Now, tell me, when you started, no, when you, well, it sounds like when you wrote those original three books, you were trying to move into traditional publishing. Is that right?
yeah, well, that was way before
Right.
independent and Amazon and everything else,
Hmm.
so, you had some publishing companies that would take your money to publish and,
Right.
but you still have plenty of those out there and pretty much kind of a ripoff. But yes, I kind of submitted it to a few, and it's a lot different then than it is now.
Right.
You almost have to have an agent these days to get
Right.
even in the front door,
Hmm.
traditional. So I decided to independently publish, and all my books have been independent, self-published since then, and it's good and bad in a lot of ways. I
Right.
got to do everything myself, comes out of my
Hmm.
pocket, but I have total control. I get to decide what my cover looks like,
Yeah.
and decide what the content is and everything else. Nobody's really telling me
Hmm.
what I can't and can't write. So
Right.
and I'm kind of a bit of a control freak when it comes to stuff like that. So
Hey, that's totally fair. I mean, I think it's kind of part of that creative process for writers, right? Is that you have this luxury, this freedom to be able to create these worlds and create these characters. And the last thing you want is somebody to come along and say, might want to do this a little bit differently. And I hear that a lot from authors that they really enjoy that aspect of that independent indie publishing. But it is, I agree with you. I mean, instead of having somebody find you a graphic artist, you kind of have to figure it out your own, and finding an editor and things like that. But It definitely sounds like indie publishing has worked successfully for you here over the last handful of years. You've totaled so 8 in the one series, but in total you've published 11 books, correct?
Right. My other series, the Divine Devil series, has got 3 books
Okay.
and probably will be a fourth one. Well, there'll definitely be a fourth one,
Mm.
maybe a fifth. I haven't decided yet. But and the first 2 books in that series won 2 big awards, the Silver Falchion Award from
Yeah.
the Killing Nashville folks, which was pretty prestigious. I won it back-to-back years, best
Yeah.
thriller. And the third book will hopefully be up for the award next year. So,
Right.
yes, that series is a lot different. It's more of a gritty, tough um, type of series,
Okay.
um, and written a little bit differently. Though the Jarvis books got a little more gritty as they went on,
Hmm.
but Private Eye series as opposed to a suspense thriller series as
Right.
well. So still kind of in the same genres, but
So who would you say your audience is? What audience is best suited for your book series that you have?
well, anyone who likes crime, fictional type of books, the classic, the Private Eye series kind of is your classic hard-boiled Private Eye, modern times, but modern storylines. So very much, I'm a big Robert B. Parker fan. I've always
Mhm.
enjoyed his, and he passed away in 2010, and his books have been carried on by other authors since then.
Yeah.
But his Spencer series is a great series, that kind of hard-boiled Private Eye and many others. So I've had as young as 14-year-olds buy the books, and I always
Okay.
ask their parents first
Right.
because there is language, there is a little bit of adult
Mhm.
content, and especially the Divine Devils, it's definitely grittier. And I have some parents who are like, "Nope, they need, nope, thank you for telling me."
Yeah.
And I have others, "Oh, you know, there's way worse on TV,"
Right.
and they like that their kid is reading.
Hmm.
Doesn't matter what it's reading, and maybe they'll read it as well or read it first. And I've had some parents say, "I'll read it first, and I'll give it to them if they want." So
Yeah.
anyone likes suspense thrillers, the Divine Devils, I would liken it to a lot of James Patterson or even Lee Child, those type.
Okay.
I wish I had their sales, but uh, and their movie deals and all
Right.
that. But
Yes. All of it, the package.
uh,
Now, when you're writing, tell me something. What is probably one of the most surprising things that you've learned while you've created or have written these books?
good question. Surprisingly, um, just the process itself
Mhm.
is obviously challenging. One thing for me being independent, I don't have any hard deadlines I have to hit. I
Right.
just, other than maybe fans coming and say, "When's your next book coming out?"
Right.
And I don't usually give myself hard deadlines. But I know when I first started writing, I wanted to outline everything,
Mhm.
and I've gotten completely away from that. And I'm very much a sit down, I got a general idea, and I just kind of I like to say, let the book write itself. I
Mhm.
wish it was that simple. I
Right.
wish I could just plug into my head and it would just flow right out of me. But sometimes the book and the characters just tell me where the story's going as I start to write and as I create additional characters in the story. So I think from that point, I was a little surprised that I would be able to write that way, and now it's really the only way I can write. I don't really outline anything other than
Right.
tracking character names, just
Mhm.
so my characters don't all have the same name or start with the same first letter and
Right.
try to vary up and stuff.
Yeah. Now, when you sit down to write a book, starting into that process, you've got the idea in your head. Do you sit down and kind of have the idea or the concept that you're really writing the book in order to get the sales? Obviously it's hand in hand. The reason why we write as authors is to be able to sell our books. Or is there a totally different mindset there?
Well, for me, have 2 series, so I always the series, there seems to be an order involved,
Right.
and I take a lot I do write a lot from things that I see in the headlines and kind of current events,
Mhm.
fictionalized. Like I had Twice as fatal. The third story in the Jarvis Mann series dealt with a football player having concussion issues and getting in trouble, and
Okay.
very real world things that you
Hmm.
see. And that was kind of a general thing there. I have another one, Dead Man Code, which dealt with computer hacking, and I'm a computer tech by
Oh, nice.
trade. I'm in that world. So, the Chinese and the Russians are involved and identity
Right.
theft and all these things. And, we put everything out on the internet these days and don't even
Hmm.
think about who's tracking, and Google is storing all this stuff away and all that. So, but the series, all my series, because it's like the Jarvis Man, it's the same main character. So obviously you see the evolution of him.
Hmm.
And then the Divine Devils is also its own series with Hunter Divine, but written as he has a team. They call themselves the Divine Devils. So those story there's new cases, but there's actually a backstory there. He's a former U.S. Marshal. Backstory of why he's a former U.S. Marshal,
Okay.
and his struggles to come to terms with why he lost his job, and maybe the reasons he lost it were nefarious in nature. So
Right.
he's investigating that while doing some other things. So the story's there's kind of a track there. That background one, at least in the Divine Devil series, kind of goes, and does have kind of an underlying theme that is kind of following through the books. Yet each case, the main case that runs through the books, are different. But I kind of pick things out of the headlines, like
Mhm.
Fallen Star, which just won the award, is dealing with a movie star who's in
Okay.
trouble, being blackmailed. Some of these stars, they get their videos recorded on the internet, and they
Right.
more or less get blackmailed. The third book, Sold Souls, deals with human trafficking, which was a very
Okay.
interesting,
Yeah.
horrible thing, but researching it and not understanding how really bad it is, how much it
Right.
goes on, and we don't even
Mhm.
realize it. So yeah, so there is a little bit of a process there, but each book kind of, I find a new idea, at least for the Jarvis series, and then there's the underlying theme in the Divine Devil series that I do. And then sometimes when I start writing, I think, like I said, I think it's going this way, and it
Right.
actually takes a different
Mhm.
turn just because, like I said, the book kind of and the characters kind of write themselves.
Right. Now, when you're writing these books, do you ever have that moment as you're creating your storylines or as you're going through, Jarvis Man, or, you know, do you have these moments where you think some of these topics are a little gritty, right? Some of these get a little bit dark, and once you start looking at the exposure of it, for some people it might just simply be too much. Do you ever have that moment of concern that for some of your readers that it might be too much, or have you found that niche of readers that really, they like the content of your books, and even though it's a little on the darker side, they're still out there grabbing them as they come out because they're so interested in the way that you present this information?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because I have some people are like, "Is there a lot of blood and gore in it? If so, I'm buying it."
Right. Right.
That's what they want. And I'm like, "Well, this one's a little milder." Like, I did a serial killer book, and it was, The Front Range Butcher, which was another award winner I had. And that one, I had someone just like, I say serial killer, they're like, "I'll buy it."
Yep.
Then I had another fan of mine, "I've loved all your books. I could not read The Front Range Butcher because it was just
Too much.
too
Yeah.
much." So yeah, you are gonna have that, but I I f I try to not I try not to be too graphic. I try to leave a little to the
Mhm.
imagination. The serial killer book, you know what he's doing, but I
Right.
don't think it's that graphic. But I think there's enough there. There's that underlying, what's
Hmm.
going on, and I think
Right.
that's what bothers some people. It's the same thing with the human trafficking book, human trafficking, sex trafficking. Um, I wanted to make sure I was not glorifying it in any way. I had that concern
Hmm.
writing it, and my cover artist, my most recent cover artist, and I've had a few, but she's done, I think, my last 6 or 7 books.
Hmm.
She actually works in the human trafficking world
Wow.
as an advocate to get these girls, and in cases, some
Right.
cases boys, but a
Mhm.
majority are girls and women
Right.
out. And she gave me a lot of feedback. I said, she gave me a lot of information. We did a little interview and we talked about it. And she gave me a lot of information. And then she read an early version of the book and really enjoyed it. And shortly before the book was ready to be released, when I was finishing up the editing, she even sent me this text message. She goes, Randy, this just happened to me today, dealing into work, and it's straight out of your
Wow.
book, and it was
Wow.
like, that just made me feel
Yeah.
really good. That I
Right.
felt like I didn't, but she told me, she says, no, you're not glorifying it. And I didn't want to have a happy ending, because she's like, if I get one girl out of 100 out
Right.
of, that's a good day, because
Right.
many of them have nothing else to fall back on. Have little or no education. A lot of them are on drugs because the traffickers keep them drugged
Right.
up. It's hard to get out of there. So I wanted to make sure too, there was going to be some success, but there was also going to be some failures, because unfortunately that's the way the world is. But
Right.
some people will find that the books are going to be too graphic, and I do hear it both ways. The
Right.
more
Right.
the gorier, the better. Oh no, I don't want anything
Right.
like that. So, and
Now, of the books that you've published, would you say that that particular book, given your, relation to your artist and kind of how you're in that world, so to speak, in regard to being able to hear her feedback, would you say that's your favorite book that you've published as of right now?
yeah, I certainly think it's the best book I've written. And in every book I feel like I get a little bit better. And I've had different editors through the years, and different editors challenge me in different ways
Hmm.
as well. But I do think that one, and it's a long book too. It's 150 some thousand words, about 440
Wow.
pages. So it's a pretty long book, but there's a
Hmm.
lot going on. I don't think anybody will be bored reading it.
Hmm.
Of course, I've read it so many times, reading and rereading it and stuff. But I think, yes, that's clearly the best. And I think this whole Divine Devil series has clearly been my best work, and hopefully I can continue it in book four. I kind of started book four, and then I decided, no, I'm gonna put it aside, because the third book was just so intense.
Right.
So I'm going back to writing a new Jarvis Mann book, because he's a little more of a flip, and a little bit
Okay.
sarcastic, and
Yeah.
a little more humor. It still has a little bit of grit to it, but not nearly as gritty. And I just wanted to get myself into something a little more fun to write, well, somewhat fun
Right.
to write, as opposed to the dark world that the Hunter Divine and the Divine Devils are in.
Yeah. So in that series, that is the third book of that series, called Sold Souls.
Right.
Now, if a reader were to come into those and into that series, or even the Jarvis Man, are any of the books able to be read as a standalone, or is it advisable like start at book one and go forward because you need that backstory? I know you mentioned in the Divine Devils you kind of need some backstory because of that association to his prior job with the U.S. Marshals. Is the same with the Jarvis Man series, or can those be read as standalones?
So Jarvis Man is written to be standalones. There is some evolution of the characters
Yeah.
through that, and you might, if you read a later book, you might get a little spoiler in there that
Yeah.
might, from an earlier book.
Hmm.
But I write them to be read as standalones. Obviously, it can be better, but it doesn't have to be. The only two I say for sure should be read in sequence in the Jarvis Man series are the last two, Front Range Butcher and Man in the Crossfire, because there is a storyline that carries over from Butcher into Man in the Crossfire.
Okay.
But beyond that, anyone could pick up the books; they wouldn't be lost
Yeah.
in any way. If a character's in there and he's been to previous, I say, well, they met doing this.
Right.
There's a little bit of, you get a little bit. The Divine Devils, really, I tell people they should be, certainly. And again, wouldn't have to. You wouldn't be again lost. But I because there's so much especially backstory going on there, it really should be read in order.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just to be able to kind of wrap the whole package up together. Now, I know
Right.
that Hunter Divine and Jarvis Mann, your two main characters in your series, are your favorite characters that you've written. So I'm going to throw a challenge question out here for you. It's not one that was in our interview notes, but if Hunter and Jarvis were to go up face to face in a battle, who do you think would win?
Good question.
It's a tough one.
I think it would be Hunter.
Yeah, a little grittier. Yeah.
Hunter's, he's kind of from the streets, gritty world. Jarvis is pretty tough, but I'd say Hunter is tougher. And I've actually had the two meet.
Oh,
And
cool.
I've actually linked the series a little bit with some characters, but I wrote a little short story called oh geez, I have to bring up my website so I can remember the title of it. But I wrote a little short story where Hunter
Mhm.
Devine walks into Jarvis's bar, which
Oh,
Jarvis
wow.
opened a bar at the end, and have a beer together. They just kind
Cool.
of gradually meet and they kind
Yeah.
of talk and stuff. So it's a little short story bonus that I have on my website. But yeah, Hunter, I would say would beat Jarvis. Jarvis would give him a good fight,
Yeah.
but and he'd joke about it because he's one of those that cracks jokes while he's
Right.
butt kicked. So
Right. In the middle of a tough situation, he's the one
yeah,
that's usually
that's his
laughing.
way of dealing with it. Yeah.
Very cool. Now you mentioned, heading over to your website. I do want to touch a little base on where readers can find and buy your books. So all of your books, as of right now, are available on Amazon in ebook form, correct?
Ebook and paperback both are on
Ebook
Amazon.
and paperback.
Yep.
Perfect. And
And they're also available under Kindle Unlimited if for anyone who does
oh,
the
nice.
subscription service. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And now, additionally speaking, readers can also come directly to you in order to buy paperbacks from you directly. I know you do a lot of different craft fairs and a lot of different book signing events, even just across the country, not necessarily here locally in Colorado, but all over. You were recently in Nashville, correct?
Right. That was the Killer Nashville Writers Conference, which I've done the last couple of years, and they have a bookstore there. So I sold a few books, not as many as I'd hoped. With
Yeah.
so many other authors to compete against,
Right.
it's really challenging. But
Yeah.
yes, I've done that. There's a book event I do in South Dakota each
Oh,
year
nice.
in June. I've been to Louisville, St. Louis for other author events, and maybe some others in the future when
Yeah.
time and money allows it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, traveling right now is a little bit crazy just across the board, whether it's by plane or whether it's by vehicle. And then, of course, trying to find the time on top of that. Plus, you still have to be writing in order to continue your
Somewhere
series,
there.
right? How do
Yes,
you
that's
juggle it all?
the fun is to someday maybe be able to travel and still write at the same time. Unfortunately, internet connections, we have an RV, so we do a
Right.
lot of stuff
Okay.
in the valley, but internet connections and campgrounds are just
Right.
horrible.
Right.
It's just really, really slow. So yeah, it's Jarvis Hunter and a Beer. That was the name of my short story. So
There we
that
go.
was
Okay. And that's where
yeah.
Jarvis and Hunter come together and meet for the first time.
Me just out of the blue, just comes in for a beer and
How
they chat a
cool.
little bit and find out they have a little bit in common, but no fisticuffs. Yeah.
Yeah. Now that can be found on your website.
Hmm.
And just for reference to that, the website is https. And then we're going to have colon backslash backslash
Yeah,
r
forward slash. Yeah. The
forward slash
colon
forward slash.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
rweir.net, correct? Is
Right.
the website. And that not only can they find your short story there, your books, reach out to you, they can also find newsletter information as well about upcoming books and upcoming publications. If you had a reader that was interested, could they reach out to you or contact you in purchasing your books and have them signed? Is that something that you do for readers as well?
Yeah, I do. Anyone who wants it, if they're in another part of the country, I ship it for an inexpensive flat fee,
Very cool.
sign it. If they're in the area here in Colorado, either I could say, well, I'm doing this event and might be in your neighborhood,
Mhm.
or oftentimes I had some people who have bought books at events I've done and they say, I'd like to get some more, and I'd meet them at a Starbucks or something. And
Oh, nice. Very cool.
yeah, so
Okay.
little personalized service on my
For
part.
sure.
Gets
Yeah,
me out
it's
of the
nice
house
to be
too.
able to. I think sometimes authors, I think readers sometimes have that perception that authors are so far out there that they're untouchable, that it's hard sometimes to reach out to them and even just simply say, hey, I loved your books, or to meet up and talk about your books, or what this background is of how you came about your books. And I think it's important that you have that. Not all authors do, but I love that you have that availability for your readers and be able to personalize books for them. And hopefully this too, we can have your readers come and they can also get some of this information too on how you write your stories and how you're inspired by your stories. Which is something that I will ask you. So, is there anything particular that's ever happened that inspires these storylines, or is it just sometimes happenstance and it just everything comes together?
Yeah, sometimes it's just something I see out there. Sometimes it's just an idea that pops in my head. I always figure
Mhm.
these ideas are just kind of floating around out there. And, sometimes I might be watching maybe something on Netflix or something, and I
Mhm.
go, that maybe this would be a good storyline, not to steal
Mhm.
from anyone else's ideas, but I thought maybe if we did it this way,
Mhm.
that would be more interesting. But
Yeah.
yeah, generally speaking, the ideas just come there, and so far I haven't run into too many walls yet. Um, Trying not to repeat myself. Uh, the bad guys in the world, they do the
Right.
drugs and the prostitution and illegal gambling and all those other things.
Right. So then, mentioning that you haven't hit a whole lot of walls, would you say that you haven't had a lot of problems or challenges over time with writer's block?
No, I really haven't. Not really true writer's block where it's
Hmm.
just like I just can't get it. And I'm one of those people, and I rarely even throw away anything. Like writer Carter Wilson, who's a local writer here, and he writes horror stuff. And I remember seeing him post recently that he had he just tossed out like 10,000 words. It just
Oh, wow.
wasn't working and stuff.
Right.
And he's just, in fact, starting over again. And I've never run into that. I might have to go back and rewrite and fix some things,
Hmm.
and I've had a couple times where I've written a chapter two different ways and decided which one, but
Right.
never any really true writer's block, knock on wood.
Right.
I haven't. And I'm a very streaky writer. I've always have been. I'll sit down and I can write 30, 40,000 words, just bang, 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 it just comes out, and then I'll stop.
Right.
A lot of times because I don't outline, I'll stop and I'll go back and reread,
Hmm.
take a break from it, rest my brain, and go, okay, well, we're going to continue on from here. Um, but yeah, if I'm not inspired to write, I generally don't write. I don't like
Right.
to force it out of me.
Hmm. I hear that a lot. We do some writing, creative writing type classes for those that are kind of interested in getting into writing. We talk a little bit about different ways to publish. And one of the questions that always comes up, even for those that aren't experienced, but I think it's because they hear the terminology, is what do you do when you get writer's block? And I think that's the best piece of advice. And that's what I encourage people. If you're having writer's block and you're not feeling inspired, there's no point in writing that particular story. Maybe try something different, maybe try and write a poem or write a short story about something else just to give your brain a little bit of a break. But if it's not talking to you, there's no point in trying to force it because then you feel that. You feel that in your stories.
Yep,
Um,
I agree.
in in talking about some of your character inspiration, one of the questions that we like to ask, of course, it is something of interest to a lot of readers, is there anyone particular that you've written or have your character has been inspired by?
Well, that's a good question. I have Jarvis going back to his hometown of Des Moines, Iowa, to help his brother out of a jam, and my brother lives in Des Moines,
Oh,
which is where
okay.
I grew up.
Yeah.
But it's not really my brother. So some people say, "Is
Okay.
that really your brother you're writing about?" No, it's not him.
Right.
And the brother dies in the book. No spoilers. So my brother's still alive and kicking and stuff.
Right.
But no, usually it's just little bits and pieces. I
Mhm.
might see somebody and I go, "Oh, that hairstyle might would be good,"
Yep.
or that, the way he walks or something like that. But no real um, people in my books, other
Okay.
than in Sold Souls,
Hmm.
my cover artist, I did create a character for her,
Oh,
changed
nice.
the name
Hmm.
based on her and kind of borrowed from her, but she would be the only one. And obviously, with her blessing and stuff, I
Right.
wrote the character because she's like a little teeny short thing. I mean, you think
All
this
right.
little 5 foot 2, 3 woman would
Yep.
not be in that world, but she's tough. tough, and she's had to deal with, people who threatened her and everything else. And so I kind of based that character on her as well. But that would be the only one.
Okay.
And obviously with her blessing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, all right. Okay. So writer's block is one thing that we get a lot of questions about. And I think that if you're scared about it, you'll probably experience it. And another thing we get a lot of questions about is negative reviews. So, obviously, not every book is everybody's cup of tea. So, how do you handle negative reviews, or do you even look at them at all?
I actually read every review, and there's some people out there say you shouldn't read any reviews,
Mhm.
good or bad. I'm one of those that reads every review,
Okay.
um, especially on Goodreads. Amazon, you can't comment on them anymore. You used to be able to make a comment on a review,
Oh.
but I always like to thank people for leaving a review,
Mhm.
for reading and leaving. If it's a positive review, I thank them and appreciate it, and I suggest that read others. And even those that are 1 or 2 stars, maybe, I will occasionally post and say, still thank them for posting
Yeah.
the review. I mean, I appreciate them taking the time. I'm sorry they didn't like the book, but I'm not going to get in a war of words because you're
Right.
right. Not everybody's going to like what you do. There's going to be certain things. I've had some people say, well, you don't have enough commas in here
Oh,
or
right.
something like that.
Yes. Mhm.
Editing and stuff. And editing, I think, is still can be very subjective. What people think
Right.
think that should be, and there should be a comma here, or maybe this and that, or you're too many run-on sentences, or those sentences are too short. You get the varying things.
Right.
But I take all of them. I take all of them seriously. If it's a good, there's a lot of 2-star reviews that have been, very well written, and
Right.
I take them subjectively and go, yeah. And so one of the things is I'm a fairly descriptive writer.
Mhm.
Um, and it's just the way my mind works. I see things and I get down. And my editors sometimes will tell me, you got too much there. You're
Right.
you don't need to get outline
Mhm.
every little thing. And I'll tone it back some. But I'll get some reviews where they say, I love the story, but I like things left to my imagination. You've got
Right.
too many, you're just too descriptive. And then I have other people who say, I love that you paint a picture.
Right.
So everyone has a different opinion, but I take them all. I don't get upset with bad reviews. The only ones I ever thought, I had a couple of bad reviews. I think it was 2 stars on Amazon,
Mhm.
and it was a verified purchase too, which was really weird. And he said didn't like the book. It was a Christian writer, or this was Christian content. And I'm like, my books are not Christian content. I'm not sure where that even came from, but that was the whole review.
Wow. Not a whole lot to go off of, but it almost makes
Yeah,
you wonder,
but it
like, did
was
you hit the wrong book that you were
for the
maybe
book,
trying to
so what the
review?
heck, right?
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that one of the things that, especially in inspiring, new authors, new writers that are coming into it, I think that they get very wrapped up in that idea of you're just the creator of, and essentially, the person who is the pencil pusher to put the words down on the paper. And I think, especially for independent, as you well know, that you don't have a publishing agent behind you to push those sales. You're also a part of sales. And if you can kind of get comfortable in sales with the no, it's really not that scary. So, just like you said, if you can just learn to take those reviews in stride and be thankful that even if they didn't necessarily like the book or it didn't meet what they were, their expectations, even just coming back to your Amazon page and leaving a review, taking the time to leave the review sometimes is nice to be able to have. I think it's important that inspiring new writers learn that sometimes you just have to take things in stride and be thankful that people are still interacting with you and just kind of move forward.
Yeah, I mean, everybody has to find their audience. I mean, there's people out there that won't like anything you write, and
Right.
they probably won't even look at your books. And there's some people who think it's interesting and don't like it. But and I like that because that's one of the reasons I've always liked being independent is I don't have
Right.
to, I don't have to take anyone's. criticism. I take it. My editors and my beta readers, I use them, and they help me out there with the work and scale stuff back. But I also can sit there and say, no, I'm not going to
Right.
scale this back. I
Right.
want this in here because I feel it's important to the story. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, everyone's got to find their audience, and your audience may be very narrow. Obviously, the thriller genre and the private eye and the crime mystery are probably next to romance is probably the biggest, though, sci-fi and
Right.
fantasy are very popular too. But
Hmm.
romance is the big seller. So I get a lot of people, but I also have a lot of competition too. So
Right. Now, speaking of, new authors, new writers, those that are inspired to start on their very first book, what would be a piece of advice that you could send them off with?
well, I tell everybody this all the time about writing. I say, if you have a passion to write, write,
Hmm.
but don't expect to get rich.
Right.
If you're lucky enough to get rich, great.
Mhm.
But it's like the 1%, maybe
Right.
less than 1% of the authors
Mhm.
out there are, the James Pattersons and the Michael Connellys of the world. Those guys, got the big contracts and they're making the huge monies. But there are many out there that are independent that are making a living at it. I mean, we had the
Right.
Killing Nashville event that we did a few weeks back. There was a lady there, and she sold close to 1 million books, and her
Wow.
husband even quit their job. He now helps her with everything. She does it all herself
Wow.
and is very successful. But it's a rarity and it's a hard work. But
Hmm.
if you got that passion to do it, I say write it. Don't quit your day job. And if you're lucky enough and you put in the work, um, hopefully you'll break even at least
Right. Yeah.
eventually. But in all likelihood, that first book, especially if you're going to try to submit it to
Hmm.
publishers, it's an extremely long process and
Yeah.
you're going to get a lot of rejection
Right.
in all likelihood, unless you're really, really lucky. And most people aren't. Usually it's, you know, 10, hundreds of times, you're
Right.
sending in. And
Right.
most publishers won't even talk to you unless you've got an agent these days either.
Right. True. Now, even though you're not necessarily in that position where there's a high ratio percentage that you're likely going to get rich, you can still be very successful in your book series, as you have shown. Tell us some of the awards that your books and your series have gotten over the years.
Yeah, so the first award I ever won was for the Front Range Butcher. That was from Reader's Favorite, which is a pretty prestigious
Yeah.
award, and it was for Best Psychological Thriller in 2019, which is a real
Very
surprise.
cool.
And I got a nice little metal medallion here that's
Yeah.
back here
Nice.
on my desk here that they sent me. They have an award ceremony in Miami, but it was like Thanksgiving weekend, and I wasn't
Oh,
going to fly
wow.
to Miami
Yeah.
for Thanksgiving. And and then they haven't been able to hold the awards ceremonies for like 3 years in a row.
Right.
Because I also won for Reader's Favorite for um, I was considered a runner-up for Best Thriller of the Year for the first book, The Divine Devils.
Okay.
Um, and then the Silver Falchion Award, which was from Killer Nashville, which is run by Clay Stafford. He's well known. He used to be an actor, and he has this big event he runs. He's been running it now. I think this was his 17th year.
Wow.
He's done it down in Nashville. But the first book, The Divine Devils, won Best Thriller in 2021, and
Hmm.
then Fallen Star won the same Silver Falchion Award in 2000. And I don't know if you can see these on the camera,
Yeah.
but that's my two medallions there for Best Thriller. I guess
Wow.
I always go the wrong way. Mirror.
Very cool.
Yes. So those are my medallions, and I usually bring those to the events I do, so to put them with the
Yeah.
books and stuff
Yeah.
for
Absolutely.
Best Thriller. And this last year, when I won, just got back from Nashville in August.
Hmm.
Um, there was over 1,000 books submitted. He said it
Wow.
was the biggest year ever, and they have a lot of other awards besides the thriller category. There was suspense and private investigator and
Yeah.
some others. Um, so I was more surprised I won the second year in a row for the same categories, which was pretty thrilling. So
Yeah. Very cool. Well, that's awesome. Congratulations. I think that's an amazing feat to be able to win not only just one award. I mean, some authors I think are just, well, if I can just get one, if I can just get one reader, but to even, to continue going so far into your writing that you've won multiple awards, I think that's amazing. You had mentioned that you really enjoyed reading Robert B. Parker. I'm sure some of that inspiration has come from some of your past authors that you've enjoyed reading, and reading those books has moved you into writing your own books and these award-winning books, which is awesome. What would you say is your favorite Parker book?
Of the Spencer novels,
Hmm.
I would say, and I'm drawing a blank on the title, so there's a couple of them.
Yeah.
Um, I think it was Sudden Mischief,
Okay.
and I have them on my shelf back here, so I gotta look real quick. Oh, A Catskill Eagle was another one. That
Okay.
was fairly early. Those are really good ones, and they're a little bit longer. His books are not always very big. He's had some that were only 200, 250 pages,
Yeah.
but he's had a couple of big ones. But yes, those are the good ones. And his Jesse Stone books are also were really good. And he
Hmm.
had a female private eye, Sonny Randall series, which didn't do as well. And he
Right.
wrote those books with Helen Hunt in mind, playing Sonny Randall in movies,
Oh,
but it
okay.
never came to pass. So
Right.
uh,
Now,
if
if I remember correctly, the Jesse Stone that was turned into a TV series, wasn't it?
right, and so
Or
was Spencer.
movie?
Spencer was a series in the '80s with
Okay.
Robert Urich and Avery Brooks playing Hawk. Avery Brooks was an excellent Hawk character as
Hmm.
well, which is kind of his. I don't want to call him a sidekick, but he's his
Yeah.
friend in effect. And then yes, Jesse Stone was Tom
Selleck.
Selleck. Yes, yes.
Hmm.
Drawing a blank on his name. Tom Selleck, and Tom was actually a little too old to play him. He
Hmm.
had to lighten up his hair and everything and stuff. But
Okay.
those were very successful They were TV movies, and I think they
Yeah.
made not eight, nine of them, something
I
like
know,
that.
yeah, I know
So
there were quite a few of the Stone. I wasn't familiar with the others, but I mean, definitely, I mean, what an amazing accomplishment to have as an author. That would be super cool. I know that Parker passed some years ago. If you had had the opportunity to reach out to him today, what is something that you think you would ask him about?
well, he is a grand master.
Yeah.
He's one of those great writers that's won so many awards. And I would just love to pick his brain on his writing process. Spencer, I mean, Spencer in the books, I think, is him
Right.
as well. He writes them in
Mhm.
first person, which is what I do with the Jarvis books. And everyone thinks I'm Jarvis as well, which I tell them that's not true.
Right.
I'm not nearly as tough as he is. Um, but I would love to dig into his writing process. Um, and just ask him, is Spencer really you? Was it really you?
Right.
Did you envision that character as yourself?
Hmm.
Because Robert Urich, who played him on the TV show, was a little too pretty.
Okay.
I think Robert Mitchum is who he always envisioned as
Yeah.
being Spencer. Robert by that time was probably getting a little too old, but um, and I think that's who he really wanted to play Spencer in movies and on TV. And there was a couple other actors that played it, at least one other actor, which I'm
Yeah.
drawing a blank on right now. But I'd love to get into his mind about the writing process and where Spencer came from. And he started very small as well, um, living out of his home in the first book, and I think maybe it was the third or fourth one where they really took off, and then it was from there. And he was
Right.
one of those guys too that he never rewrote anything. He would just
Right.
write the book and give
Hmm.
it to his editors and say, "You fix everything." He
Right.
never went back and proofread or edited or anything. It was an interesting process. I
Yeah.
wish I could get away with that,
I
but then
know,
that would be
right?
pretty much impossible to do. So
Right. Well, and see, and that just, I really want to hit that home, and that, that just goes to show that, authors just like yourself, award-winning authors, those that have these amazing accomplishments, you we're all just people. And I think that it's encouraging to know that if you have readers, those that are interested in potentially starting this writing process, or even just creatively, just for their own expression, just to get the stories out or get the characters out of their head, to be able to feel comfortable with reaching out and being able to, email or go to Facebook and find their favorite authors. And sometimes, depending on how big they are, depends on if they actually will be the one to respond to you, or if whether it's a correspondent of their team or something like that. But I definitely, I think that that's something that's important to show that people should reach out when they're interested, and pick an author's brain and see where that inspiration comes from. Now, your readers can find you on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, correct?
Right. I don't,
Okay.
social media is one of those toxic
Yeah.
things these days. And so unfortunately you've got to do it. And I try to stay out of the politics of it, but I'm probably on Facebook more than anything else, but I do Twitter and Instagram, and I do have accounts there, and they can find me the profiles on there. And I try to stick with happy stuff instead of
Oh, yeah,
bad
for
stuff.
sure. Yep, absolutely. Well, and so what we'll do from here is we'll go ahead and wrap up for the day. It's been an amazing interview. I am so thankful that you joined us today and took some time out of your day to meet and kind of talk about questions and your processes. From here, I will be able to go through and I'll show our readers where they can find you. And I'll also show our readers your website so that they know where to find you there as well, so they can reach out, and your Amazon platform, your central page there, so that they know where they can locate all of your books that you've written.
Yep, and I encourage people, if they want to sign up for my newsletter, they can do that through the website. And I actually give a free ebook of the
Very
first
cool.
novel in the Jarvis series,
Nice.
Tracking Shadow. And my newsletter goes out basically once a month, and I don't sell anybody's email addresses. I don't think anybody wants to pay me for it anyway. So
No.
nobody's at least offered yet. And
Right.
I always encourage people to email me. They can message me through the website, but my email address is out there. It's basically just author@rweir.net, but anyone's is welcome to answer. I've got several people that email me all the time. I've had some people who bought books and they had found them in a library or whatever and wanted
Hmm.
to buy the books and hope that I would mail them to them, get a mailed copy signed, and I'm always more than happy to take the time to do that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, for those that are interested, they know they'll be able to find your books. We are also looking. Do we have your books in our consortium right now?
You might. I think they were discussing if they do, and it's been a few years since I've been there, so they might have. I think I had 3 books maybe out at the time, maybe 4, but I think I had Tracking a Shadow, Twice as Fatal, and maybe Blood Brothers,
Okay.
possibly at that time. But I don't remember exactly for sure if they did or not.
Hmm.
But I know they had discussed that possibility.
We do. So we do. We have a few of your books at we've got some of the Jarvis Man. I thought that we did, but I didn't get a chance to check this before our interview today. And I'm going to do a shameless plug, because if you go back on our Facebook page and see my videos, it's always about here, this is how you can use our website and our app.
Right?
So yes, we do. On our search function of Aspen Cat on the PP Libraries page, I'm going to show this real quick. You can search by author name here at the top. And yeah, so we've got a couple of the
Nice. Right.
different
Yep.
books there at the
Yep.
library.
Handman
And
Camp. So I did have a few more books than I realized. So
yeah,
yep,
we need to
when
get
I
a
did
few
it.
more added to the consortium there. So I will definitely talk to our manager, and we'll see what we can do to get some of those in. I believe as of right now, we are one of the only libraries in the consortium just here very specifically locally. So we definitely want to get some of those added, because I know that there are definitely some that are being checked out. We've got the Front Range Butcher on there as well. So definitely some from the Jarvis Man. Detective novels, looks like we've got a couple that we'll catch up on. So we'll get those added to the consortium. Readers can come there, sign up for your newsletter, and get that first ebook for free, which is an awesome opportunity for them to kind of dive into your work. So I thank you. I am so appreciative for the time that you've taken with us today. And then from here, we'll just go right on into where I will talk about where the readers will be able to find your work.
Thank you much.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
absolutely. Thank you. Wow. So, what another awesome author talk to have. We are so thankful that Randy could take some time for us today to be able to talk about his writing processes, what it looks like during his character development, and his book series that he has. So, one thing that I want to do is I want to show you where you can find Randy, where you can find his books, and where you can purchase them. So, what I'm going to do here is just the same as before. If you've seen some of our previous author talks, that takes a second. I am going to bring you right here to online where you can find his website, his Amazon Author Central page, and then also connect with him on Facebook if you're interested in being able to get some of those personalized books or reach out to him and be able to ask him questions. So, the first thing we're going to do here is this time I'm not going to butcher it by trying to remember it off the top of my head. This is his website. And if you look right up here is the website link. You're going to go to rweir.net, and that's going to bring you right here to Randy's website. When you first start off, the first thing it's going to bring you into is an opportunity to sign up for his newsletter. His newsletter talks a lot about his books, upcoming publications, new news that's going on with his current book series, also certain events that he's going to be attending in case it's something you're interested in, and also special offers that he has as well. You'll enter in your email, first name, last name, and you're going to click to subscribe. And just like Randy told us, once you subscribe to that newsletter, you're also going to have access to be able to get his first book in his series for free in ebook form, which is really awesome. That's a great deal to be able to kind of dive into the book series that he has. So we kind of talked a little bit. Randy has two book series. One is the Jarvis Man books, and one is the Hunter Divine books. So here at the top of his page, you're going to find a lot of information. Home is going to be where you find the basic information. About is going to be about Randy and his writing. He does also maintain a blog. So if you're interested in seeing maybe some of the books that he has been reading, things that he likes, things that he wants to give reviews on, you'll find that there in his blog. In the Jarvis Man books, if you hover over the top of that, it's going to bring you into a drop down of all of the Jarvis Man series that he has. Once you go into these particular books, it's going to give you a little bit of a recap of the book. You'll be able to locate a synopsis on it, some different graphics on it, and also links to be able to purchase these books as well. If you want to purchase them over from Amazon or a different, a different page or platform or something like that. Now, in addition to that, we also have the Hunter Divine books. There's 3 of those books currently out in that series. You'll find those books here. Jarvis Hunter and a Beer is the very short story that's super cool that he mentions where Jarvis and Hunter kind of run into one another at Jarvis's bar. Book previews, you'll see a link here to some of the synopsises and maybe a little bit bigger preview for you for some of his books, so to speak. Interviews, so some of our the podcast that he does, our author interviews should be up here as well. If you're interested in going back and reviewing any of his interviews or articles that he's been mentioned in, upcoming events that he has, his social media links. So if you're on Instagram, Goodreads, or Twitter, you can find him there. And then also his Amazon Central page. So we're going to hop right over to that. Okay, so from here, I'm going to show you how you can connect with Randy on social media. So we know that by going to his website, you can list or go directly to the list, and you can find him by clicking on any of these. If you're primarily a Facebook user, which is where we're going to tag Randy once we get the video uploaded to our Pines and Plains Libraries Facebook page, you can connect with him here at Books by Author R. Weir. And here you have a link to be able to shop so you can purchase his books directly. It'll take you over to his Amazon page so that you can purchase those books in paperback or ebook form. You can also message him directly if you would like to. If you're wanting a personalized book, or if you have questions on the book series, questions on which one to start with, you can message him directly and he can kind of guide you through that. You can also reach out to Randy by email. His email is located here. And if you start with Facebook and still need to find his actual website, you can actually locate that right here on his about information at the top of his Facebook page. You're going to get a lot of information Some things that he posts in his newsletter will be available for you here, different interviews and things like that, locations of where he's going to be if he's going to be doing an event. So it's a wonderful way to be able to stay in contact with all of his different books. And all you have to do is just go right over here to this button and click the follow button. And that way, as Randy posts information on his Facebook page, it'll send you notifications so that you can stay current and up to date with him and all of his books and books to come. So, we really want to thank you today for being with us during this author interview. We've had an amazing time. I am super excited to be able to host Randy and be able to get you access to his books. In addition to that, just like we mentioned in our interview, we do have some of his books available in our consortium, in our collection there at the Pines and Plains Libraries District. So if you're a patron of ours, you can go to our website, pplibraries.org. You can type in that search function for his name, R. Weir, and then that will take you directly to what books we have available. You can place a hold on those and pick them up at your local branch. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We are definitely looking forward to continuing doing some awesome author talks with different authors that have new books coming out. And so if you're interested and you are a local author or one that has, anything to do with books in general, in writing and publishing, definitely reach out to me. My email is located there on our Facebook page. In many different locations. You can find me, jrichardson@pplibraries.org. Send me an email, let me know your interest, and we can certainly see what we can do to get something set up. Thank you again so much, everybody, and we hope that you enjoyed today's author talk.